Hey guys, this is going to be what's unique about these uniques, because I want to talk about Saqawal set items. Path of Exile does not have a typical set bonuses that you see in other games, and there are only 4 sets total. Each set has an aspect, which is almost like an aura. These sets came out during 3.2 Bestiary League, and they do drop from dedicated bosses, which can be accessed by capturing specific beasts and then using beastcraft to open the portal to those boss fights. Saqawal boss is one of the lower level beasts, and the unique skill is called Aspect of the Avian, which you can also beastcraft on a rare item using Menagerie, and it counts as a normal mod, which allows you to further benchcraft your item. Aspects are always a suffix modifier, by the way. First, let's look at what Aspect of the Avian does, and then we'll go over unique set items and talk about how they can be used. A player can only have one aspect, and all aspects are reserved until 5% of your mana. While Aspect of the Avian is active, it grants 2 buffs alternating every 4 seconds. These buffs are called Avian's Might and Avian's Flight. Might buff grants you and your minions 10% chance to deal double damage, and Avian's Flight gives you and your minions 10% increased movement speed, which on its own is pretty nice, and you don't need any unique items to benefit from this aspect. However, 2 buffs rotate every 4 seconds, and if you only want, for example, double damage, then you will have it only 50% of the time. So let's look at Saqawal's items. Boots are the one that grant Aspect of the Avian skill, but like I mentioned, you can beastcraft it on a rare item. However, these boots can lower or increase the duration of the Avian's flight, which gives movement speed. So if you want longer uptime on double damage buff, you would want a negative duration on these boots, which would lower the duration of the movement speed buff. And if we look at Saqawal's gloves, it can increase or reduce duration of Avian's Might buff, which grants double damage. So you can also increase the duration of Avian's Might and lower duration of Avian's Flight, giving you a pretty good uptime on double damage buff, while the movement speed buff would expire faster. Not only that, but these gloves also give flat, cold and lightning damage while you have Avian's Might buff. This is flat damage globally, including spells, attacks, and non-spell spells like Herald of Thunder, for example. And boots grant some life and mana regeneration during Avian's Flight buff, which isn't that great. Another trick, which will be important in a minute, is that you can place duration modifying support gems inside these boots. For example, adding increased duration support inside these boots will increase duration of both buffs, or less duration support will lower duration of both buffs. With Saqawal's body armor, you can also share Avian buffs with nearby allies, like party members or NPCs that are not technically minions, like raging spirits summoned by your raised specters. Saqawal's body armor also has 100% increased Aspect of the Avian buff effect, which raises the double damage and movement speed values, but not the other effects that you get during those buffs. For example, flat, cold and lightning damage during Avian's Might buff from the gloves will not be affected by 100% increased Aspect of the Avian buff effect. And in addition to that, Saqawal's body armor also grants 20% increased mana reservation efficiency of skills, which can help you squeeze in an extra aura. And finally, Saqawal's helmet, which grants another unique skill called Twisters, which by the way used to be called Tornado, but now we have a skill gem called Tornado. These Twisters will be affected by the support gems inside the helmet, but the helmet does not need to be linked, unless something else requires those links. Those Twisters are spells. They do physical damage, and they are projectiles that have duration of 2.5 seconds. At base, you only release one Twister each time you gain Avian's Might or Avian's Flight buff, which as a reminder rotates every 4 seconds. These Twisters move randomly, they do not aim towards enemies, sort of like Spark. As I mentioned earlier, we can lower duration of both buffs and increase the proc rate of these Twisters. We can support boots with less duration and swip affliction gems. We can also get a reduced skill effect duration on the passive skill tree, while duration mastery can give less duration. Saqawal's gloves and boots can also roll up to -2 seconds for Avian's Might and Avian's Flight buffs. However, getting close to -2 seconds is pretty hard and expensive to buy. There are also a couple other unique items that have reduced duration. Time Class Ring has up to 10% reduced skill effect duration. Warp Timepiece Unique Amulet has up to 15% reduced skill effect duration. There's also Alternate Quality Haste, which has a buff on you and nearby allies expire 5% faster at 20% quality. So as you can see, you can really lean into twisters and make them trigger a few times per second. However, these unique items and skills are from older PoE and pretty much have not been buffed since these items were introduced into the game. So these twisters have pretty low base damage, considering that you can only add 4 support gems, and most likely will want to have greater multiple projectiles or greater volley for more twisters, which actually also lowers the damage even more. But then again, you create more twisters which can bounce off wall and return and hit the same target, just like Spark. With more and more power creep, these set items lost its popularity. It is still possible to use some of these unique items in build, or even build around twisters, but the investment needed for the benefits is not really there anymore. Now I want to also briefly talk about the twister builds. It is mostly a meme and there are a couple ways of making it. Some may be more successful than others, but in general it won't be able to compete with other builds. You can go with physical to fire conversion as a chieftain, for example. I had some people were doing that. You can also try poison with poison proliferation, but I don't know, twisters move randomly and stacking enough poisons for single target may be difficult, although nothing is stopping you from using something else for single target. You may even try using corrupting fever buff, which applies physical dot. However, you're also getting reduced skill effect duration, so corrupting fever wouldn't last very long, and then you would still need to use other skills to spend life in order to refresh corrupting fever buff, or pay a couple thousands life every couple seconds to reactivate it manually. I decided to lean a bit more into minions in a very weird way that kinda works, using the Black Cane Scepter to get a lot of flat physical damage to spells, but that also requires me to have Phantasma minions. So I just threw in Summon Phantasm support inside the helmet, linked it with greater multiple projectiles, control destruction and brutality support gems. All of these supports also affect the twisters. So whenever Twister gets a kill or hits a rare or unique enemy, it has a chance to summon Phantasm that in a return increases my twister damage. However, Phantasms are pretty squishy, so I also had to get Blessed Rebirth Cluster Node to make them immortal for 4 seconds when they are summoned. I also had to link other skills with Summon Phantasm like Carrion Golem or Spectres to just have easier time of maintaining maximum Phantasms against single target. However, since I am stacking reduced skill effect duration, it affects duration of Twisters and Phantasm, so that is immediate anti-synergy. Twisters, by the way, work exactly like Spark spell. They travel randomly, they bounce off most walls, not Frost Wall, and we need projectile speed and longer duration to get more out of it. Fun fact, you can actually use Spark MTX on Saqawal's helmet, which then applies Spark MTX and changes the twister into Spark MTX. I had performance metrics enabled and those twisters destroy FPS, but they look cool. And if you use Spark MTX, you gain back FPS, but it just doesn't look as cool in my opinion. It is probably a bug and it may be fixed in the future, however I hope they leave it because almost no one uses these twisters and those who do may want to use Spark MTX to have better performance. I was constantly dropping to 30 FPS, at that point dynamic resolution kicks in to pixelate the game to keep me above 30 FPS. This time I will not be making a separate video about the twister build, so I will just include path of building import code in video description, which is not a polished plan, it's just a rough idea. I quit the build at level 79 and I will not be continuing it. I can only hope that in the future these items would receive some updates to make them more viable. Twisters are pretty cool, but their damage is way too difficult to scale, and if you want walking simulator build, we got plenty of Righteous Fire or Herald of Thunder builds. That is it for now. If you got some interesting ideas about this set, let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one.